Hi all, welcome to Cyber Warfare Labs AWS Cloud Red Team course. In this module, we will discuss about how we can perform a credential access activities using taking advantage of EC2 instance. So you can see here in cloud access phase, we are extracting the credentials. It's a temporary credential from the EC2 instance. Those credentials will allow us to access the AWS services. So you can see here how we can get the credentials. So you can see in this diagram we have a EC2 instance. So this is a EC2 instance which is running one web application. You can, or it's basically maybe used for any other purpose. But there is a multiple way to get the initial access. So you can think about a scenario. There is, if running a one application in this EC2 instance, as a red teamers, we got the initial access through exploiting RC or SSRF. So we got the initial access on these machines. Now, once you have an initial access in this EC2 instance, how you can extract or how you can grab the credentials there. So there is one, metadata services is also running there. So you can request for a credential access for this metadata endpoint. So this is the metadata endpoint. This is the URL, and where the EC2 metadata services is running there. So you can request for the credentials. So once you have a credential, you can configure your CLI to directly communicate to AWS services on the same rights with rights your EC2 instance have. In this scenario, there should be a one condition that your EC2 instance should have one role. So one role should be defined to this EC2 instance. Otherwise, there is useless to grab this credential, because the role is defined what privilege this EC2 instance have in your AWS account. Other scenario is suppose if there is no role attached to this EC2 instance, you can only perform actions, just like any command execution or anything else on the instance itself, not the other services. To perform the actions on other services, you definitely need one role which is attached to this instance. The credentials you got is the credential which is applicable for this role. So whatever rights this role have, you will get the credential, and you can use the same rights to get access all the AWS services. So let's see how we can do this thing. So in this scenario, suppose somehow we got the initial access. So we are using assume breach methodology, and we found that we got the initial access. So currently I'm using SSH key. So suppose, let's copy this one. SSH -i. Sorry, demo key EC2 USR 8.54. Okay, perfect. So suppose in this scenario, I compromised or I grabbed the SSH key using OSINT methods on GitHub or any other techniques, or you can have the same scenario. Suppose you get the initial access through exploiting the remote code execution vulnerability there. So in this scenario, suppose I got the initial access on EC2 instance. What next? So second thing, what we are going to do, let's check here. Come on. First, you have to check the if is there any role attached to this EC2. So that you can do it using this STS endpoint, or you can see here there is one role attached to this instance. If there is no role attached to this instance, even if this instance is work as a standalone instance, and you cannot interact with other AWS services associated with this account. You can only perform the actions related to this instance only. But now You can see here there is one instance. You can find out what roles this is attached. This is the ARN of this role. What is the permission this role have, and all these things. But in this case, what we are going to do, we are getting the credentials. So let's see how we can get the credential. To get the credential, we have to call, or we have to send data to this endpoint. This is a metadata endpoint. You can see here there's a two version of metadata endpoint. One is instance metadata endpoint version 1, and second one is version 2. The first scenario is when you are using the older version of metadata. That means you no need to add any headers. In this case, you can directly use this one. So I'm just directly copy this one. Copy again this one. Sorry. Copy this one. To remove this role here. And you can see here, this is the role you have to specify. So you have to specify the role which is attached to this instance. Otherwise you won't get, if there is no role attached to this instance, you won't get any credential. That means it's just like a standalone. So just copy here, paste it here, and that's it. You can see here we got the access key, secrets, as well as token. Let's open a new terminal and set this one. So I'm just we open a new terminal. Let's sts. This is I'm doing from my local machines to check if I configured anything there in my local machine. Get colon. When you're doing all these things from the machine or instance itself, you will get the role attached to this one. But if you're doing from the local machine, whatever you configured in your machines or CLI, you will get it. So there is no configuration here. I'm using AWS configure. You have to add the access key from here. Let's move this one here. This is the access key ID. Let's paste it here. Secret access key, this is the secret access key. Region, let's leave it default. Now let's execute the command again. This is saying error occurred when calling the get caller identity operation. The security token include request is invalid. Okay, let's do one thing. Okay, so that means if I configured only the access key ID and secret access key, you will getting the access denied or the token the response you are getting there. So how we can configure it? So in this case, you have to configure in your just like that. So you can see here in this case I added as a environment variable. So first thing you have to add is export AWS access key ID, and this is access key ID I have. Second thing you have to add it as a AWS secret access key. This is a secret access key. And third one you have to add it AWS session token. So that's third thing you have to add it. So what is the difference? So when you configure it, you need a access key as well as secret, but when you are adding in the environment variables, you need all these three things. So this is the difference between, because if you assume any role, if you found the the credential from the role, this is the same thing. We got the credential for the role which is attached to EC2 instance. You have to configure like that. Once you configure in environment variable, you can call this API AWS STS get caller identity. You can see the same role which is there in EC2 instance. I got the rights of the same roles. So let's do it here. So currently I'm there in EC2 instance. So when we are requesting for this your identity, you will get that this role is attached to here. I extract the credential, and I use this credential in my local machine and send the same request to the AWS services. I got, AWS endpoint, I got the same role. That means I can do the same thing which is applicable, or what permission is assigned to this role. So this is how you can get the credentials from EC2 instance, and how you can configure your CLIs to request for those AWS services, or the permission which, or the action which you want to perform. So the first thing we found that this is, you can get the credential. So you can see here we got the credential directly executing this command. In this scenario, this is only applicable if metadata version 1 is active. If it's not active, you can't directly hit this endpoint and get the credentials. You have to add another header. So in this case, this is a metadata version 2. In this case, you have to send the hit this endpoint API token. You get the token, and you have to send again the same endpoint, but with added this header. So you have to add this header there, and the token value, you will get it from here. So this will be applicable with recent version of EC2, when you have, or when admin have disabled the version 1, only applicable on version 2. So this is how you can get. So in this scenario also, you will get the same thing. Let's copy this one, because in this instance which we compromised, it's both the version for metadata is enabled. So this is very important when you're doing red teaming activity, to understand about what version they enabled. So you can see here the same scenario. I'll get it from here. I specify the role name. That's it. You will get the same access key ID, secrets, and token. But in the first scenario, if version 1 is disabled, you won't get it. But the second scenario will work in each and every case. So this is how you can get the credentials. You can configure your CLI according to that. We suggest if you have a token, you can configure it in environment variable. If you only have access key or secrets, you can configure it using AWS configuration command. So this is how you can get the credential. You can perform this credential access phase in a red teaming to your to take advantage of EC2 services. So this is how you can get the credential. You can perform all the operation with the same rights the instance have. So this is all about this video. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you.